Hi, everyone, and welcome to the special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and the Love Is Podcast. I'm excited to welcome the host of the Love Is Podcast, Kim Sorrell. Kim, how are you? And I know you're excited about our guests.
I am doing great. Thank you, Neil. And yes, I'm so excited about our guest because they have made a documentary that everybody is going to want to see. Kathleen, Jayme, and Asia Youngman. I'm so excited about the work you guys do in general, separately and together. But this particular project had I don't know, it just blew my mind when it happened and what it is. And so I just want to say, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Absolutely. Go ahead, Kim. The first question.
Yeah. So the whole situation was crazy, right? Like you don't expect it to happen. But I happen to have a daughter-in-law from Montreal who is the biggest hockey fan I've ever known. And hockey fans can be pretty fanatical. Do you find hockey fans different than other sports fans?
I would say so. I mean, I think in Canada in particular, hockey is a really important sport for us. And just having gone through the Stanley Cup playoffs with the Canucks, playing and just kind of reliving a bit of that feeling that we had back in 2011, everyone's so excited. There's just this different energy in the air. There's this extra dedication, I think, coming from fans and also people who maybe aren't the biggest hockey fans, but are still tuning into the games and getting behind the team. So I would say there's a little bit, maybe a bit more excitement, a bit more emotions. I think sometimes we as people too, our identities are really tied into our hometown teams. So we certainly saw that in 2011 and also just in the recent playoffs as well.
What I see what happens is specifically when you're looking at the sport of hockey in Canada, it's the number one sport. Imagine, specifically enough, someone got messed over in an NFL football game and what kind of riots would happen if someone got the worst call ever or worst certain situation that they lost. So it's happened. It happens when teams win as well. I'm sure in your research you saw that there have been games where this is the party, the big parade, and there's violence and there's rioting after a team's win. So when teams lose or when it happens. When you guys agree?
Yes. Yeah. So one of the most fascinating facts that we found while we were doing research is that there's a study that was done over hundreds of sports riots in North America. And Vancouver is actually the only city that riots after a loss, because you're right. It's actually a win, that jubilation that actually turned into riotous behavior. And Vancouver is, we're the only city in North America that riots after a loss. And of course, this has happened twice now in Vancouver. We rioted in 1994 for the exact same reason, when the Canucks lost a Game 7 final game. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's so interesting, isn't it? Because you would think that you would just be deflated and want to go home instead of being out on the streets and throwing rocks or whatever it is that you're doing. So I'm sure you found out some incredible inside scoop, especially because cell phones were a thing then. So the amount of film maybe that you were able to cover up, the pictures, I'll never forget, it'll never leave my mind, that one picture where everything's burning down, everything's going bad, and there's a couple making out in the middle of the road. And I just think, wow, that is such a contrast. But what are some of the things that you found out about this that you think that nobody knows?
Well, I think when Kat and I were first exploring this story, we thought maybe there was this one definitive reason why Vancouver tends to riot when we lose a hockey game. But I think what we discovered is that there were so many factors as to why we rioted for a second time in Vancouver. I think a big part of it was that there was this new generation who had heard of the 1994 riot, had maybe seen a bit of footage, especially leading up to our Game 7 in 2011. And I think there was a bit of curiosity. I think in some ways that generation wanted their own riot. And I think because smartphones were so prevalent and social media was in its infancy, especially Facebook and Twitter, people would see other people's photos and videos of them being downtown during the riot. They were drawn downtown for the same reasons, so that they could document it themselves, get their own photos, get their own selfies as like memorabilia almost from that night and souvenirs from that night. So I think social media was a huge factor, and especially when people were posting about their involvement in the riots, posting photos of them committing a crime, hashtagging Vancouver Riot and essentially incriminating themselves. So there are so many reasons I think why this happened. I think people were pointing fingers at the media, were showing, footage from that night and kind of like putting that idea into people's heads again. But I also think, maybe the city wasn't prepared for a possible riot again. And a lot of people were stuck downtown, alcohol was involved. And of course, just hockey in general. I think a lot of people were invested in the game. And I think also because hockey is such a violent sport, maybe that is a reason why people decided to partake in that type of behavior as well.
And that's the thing, and just a loss. And that game 7, because I'm not a huge hockey fan except the Penguins. That's it. When the Penguins are winning, I'm really into it because I'm born and raised in Pittsburgh, but I've been all over the United States, but Pittsburgh's my home always. The Penguins was it, but I mean, I remember losing game 7 against the Braves when it was the last time for the Pirates. That could have been a potential riot when we knew Bonds, Bonilla, everyone was going and they're leaving, and we're not going to have any stars anymore, and the Pirates are never going to compete again for a long time. That kind of game, I was so angry and upset losing to the Braves. So I could see that. Was there a certain point of game 7 in 2011 that just they were so upset and angry about the outcome, or was just the loss?
There was a moment, and we do document it in the film, so we had these like live outdoor screenings downtown. And there's a moment when someone everyone starts, kind of chanting like, F you Boston. And someone throws like a bottle at one of the outdoor screens. And I think that was one of the triggers that kind of gave permission of like, oh, hey, someone just threw a bottle at a screen. Like maybe I can do something. And then that kind of just spiraled. And of course, we saw the outcome of that, but you just need one person and then a follower. And then, I think in one of the sequences of where it kind of details how the riot started as well. So after, the bottle gets thrown, it was like one person jumping on a car, then it's like 3 people jumping in a car. And then all of a sudden it's a car being flipped. And then all of a sudden it's all the cars on the street being flipped. So when you don't have these rules and there's no repercussions right away that people can see, I think it's very easy for people to start behaving in bad behavior.
100%. Wow.
Yeah.
Go, Kim.
It's interesting that you had mentioned the bad behavior because, crowd mentality obviously is a thing. And to go along with what's going on would be easy to do. Your adrenaline's flowing. You're all pumped up. You're all this stuff going on physiologically in your body. But certainly there have to be people, I would like to think I'm one of them, that would go, well, I'm not going to break a window. Like, how does that play in?
Yeah, I think mob mentality was a huge topic for us to explore in the film, because when we interviewed some people, they were like, I was swept up in it. I couldn't control like my decision to get involved, and I was a victim of mob mentality. And I think to some degree, people can partake in events because they want to be a part of something. I think even wearing a jersey, can make people forget they're like an individual and they're part of a bigger kind of crowd. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who decided not to partake in the riots. I was one of them. I left downtown pretty quickly because I was like afraid of what was happening. So I think on some hands, maybe mob mentality is a bit of an excuse. Maybe people use that as a bit of like I couldn't help myself kind of reasoning for their involvement, because of course I think people are capable of making their own decisions, but at the same time I don't think people should have their lives ruined for making a poor decision like that, because of course we all make mistakes as humans.
All right. Well, Kim, you have a quick love question just to go throw in why this is, a special simulcast of the Love Is podcast. And go ahead, Kim, with that question, and they'll tell why I know love what they do.
Yeah. So I lived dedicated a year to figuring out the true meaning of love, this question that has plagued our world, I think. forever. And the things I found out about love just blew my mind. And so I'm always curious about where love plays a role. And here it's all about rioting, it's all about violence and whatever, but love just kind of never leaves. So I'm curious what you think of where love plays a role in it all.
One of the stories that unfortunately made the cutting room floors, and that is that when we spoke to those victims of assault, those who were assaulted during the riot, and we asked them what they wanted to happen to the perpetrators, and none of them wanted to actually press charges, which we thought was so fascinating, just because there was a whole online mob of wanting to make sure that these individuals paid. But those who were actually like physically hurt, who were there that night downtown, just wanted to forgive and move on, and that was the best way for them to do that, was just to not press charges and just to forgive and to go on about their lives.
And I'll just add to that, I think a good example of that is when the city came together the next day to clean up and to write messages of love and support, and apologizing for what happened to their city. So I think it was a great example of what can be done, how a community can come together in a positive way and then spread love.
All right. Well, fantastic. ESPN, you guys got to be excited, right? Tomorrow it debuts on ESPN and ESPN Plus stream. It's got to be great as filmmakers to be able to have this opportunity to be on ESPN, right?
100%.
It's a dream, I'm sure. Well, good luck to you guys, and everyone needs to tune into ESPN tomorrow, and you can stream it on ESPN Plus. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
All right, that was a special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and the Love Is podcast, guys. Take care.